Hello, welcome to CIE Day 5, and we're here starting with the Memory Express panel, talking about sponsorships, the do's and don'ts, and later on today we have our Valorant Top 8 starting off. But since we have our two guests here, we can start kicking things off. So first off, so people can get to know you guys and little introductions, can you guys state your name and what do you do for Memory Express?
Go ahead, Arian.
All right. My name is Arian. I am the National Community Manager here at Memory Express. So while I help out on the retail side, I'm mostly helping out on the esports end of the company, so Me Sports United, and also on our education efforts through Academy. And yeah, started out at retail for about 2.5 years or so, and then Ronnie pulled me into the head office team to start helping him on growing these two new divisions, and it's been great. He's a great leader, and yeah, having a great time. So no pressure, Ronnie, but it's your turn now.
Hey, I'm not Arian. My name is Ronnie, and I used to be the national community manager, but thanks to Arian's help, he's now that person. So instead, I'm more of a project manager. Um, in the world of business, I guess you could go with business development manager. That's pretty common for, I mean, not common. It's a pretty good fit for kind of what I do. But we'll definitely be able to dive into some fun topics that I think a lot of school clubs and even if you're not in a school club, like this is just valuable information if you run any sort of organization, esports organization. The question is sponsorships, how, why, where, when, what, all that sort of fun stuff.
Mhm.
So that's part of what I do at Memory Express. But Arian mentioned there's also the retail business. There's the education side called Academy. So I do a little bit of all three of our pillars, which is retail, education, and esports.
Yeah, definitely. You guys definitely have a lot of experience kind of into esports. We've noticed you guys held tournaments before and really been diving into almost every single school. So it's really exciting to see you guys really progress into, I would say, one of the top brands that most people or most students recognize as well on campus. So it's really exciting to see that journey from retail to now esports. So I just have like three quick, really basic introductory questions we've been asking every single panelist. So, how long have you guys been gaming for? And what's your favorite game of all time?
Oh,
Oh
Arian, you
man.
gotta start. You gotta start,
Okay,
man.
okay.
That's a great way to
Um,
start this off.
man, you know what? As soon as I came here at 1.5, with my mom and my sister, we moved into my cousin's house and they already had a Nintendo setup. So I gotta say, as a baby, I already had a controller in my hands, and I don't game as much as I used to, as much as I'd like to, but I have pretty much never stopped gaming, period. So I'm 27 now. Say it's fair 25.5 years of gaming.
Mhm.
And my favorite game, Ocarina of Time, Counter Strike. It's been forever in my life, and take Ghost of Tsushima. That's been a pretty
Oh, a newer
Oh, that's a
title.
good one.
game
What?
too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really liked it. Those are probably the most notable for me, though. Yeah,
Mhm.
all you, Ronnie.
I I guess depending on when you were born, chances are you started with either console gaming or PC gaming. So I'm not that old, but the first game that I remember enjoying was the original Street Fighter. I was 3 years old. My brother was 8, so it was more for him than for me. But when I still remember the original Nintendo controller and how that game was like the two characters is Ryu and Ken is literally the same characters. They just look different,
Yeah.
but everything about the game was really just you had the same moves and same inputs. But I am for sure a fighting game on the fighting game side. I had a long hiatus from gaming. I would say in my early 20s a little bit, started to invest more time elsewhere, but and I play games throughout my teenage years, like tons. So definitely
Mhm.
fighting games and MMOs. So just things to consume your life.
Yeah.
But favorite game is a bit of a curveball. Final Fantasy Tactics.
Ooh,
Ooh,
that's
So
definitely
nice.
a
yeah,
unique one. Yeah.
that's but then currently I mean I'm not all about Final Fantasy right now, but I still play Street Fighter 5. Super excited about Street Fighter 6. Those announcements from Capcom have been really well done. So yeah, I had a long hiatus from fighting games, and now I'm definitely still in the thick of it. So the influence for our esports tournaments, we started with CS:GO because this dude over here, Arian, and eventually we tried with some fighting games because of me. And yeah, we want to keep it fun and keep it. In the beginning, we were focused on just fundraising for COVID, actually. But yeah, back to the question at hand, I'd say, yeah, I think Final Fantasy Tactics is my favorite game.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely relate to that. I have a bunch of Final Fantasy artwork on my wall right now, so it's really cool to see a fellow
Yep.
fan. Yeah, but kind of like bouncing off of that, your favorite games. I know that some people might have a question of what's right now, what would you say is the most attractive game to someone sponsoring these kind of tournaments? What kind of title or genre is most attractive right now to you guys?
Most attractive genre. Um, when you start playing CS for so long, I mean, you're into shooters already, but any game I literally play, I just end up going back to Counter-Strike eventually. So I'd say shooters are always going to be my favorite. And action adventure. So simple ones like The Legend of Zelda, where it's kind of open world, but it's pretty limited, is my favorite, just because when something's a little more linear, you get a more robust experience. So things are a lot more scripted and designed around the limitations that you have on the map versus
Mhm.
an open world. You got to kind of go out and see tremendous hours of stuff, which just not something I always have time for anymore. So yeah, action adventure and shooters would say my favorites, I would say.
Yep, and then for you, Ronnie?
Sorry, was the question? Could you say the question again? Actually,
Yeah, so what when you're looking at these kind of genres of games, it can be like a sponsorship kind of question. What kind of genre is most attractive to you right now as a sponsor when you're looking to sponsor like an event or a tournament?
okay, I see it. I see.
Yeah.
So we have this conversation quite a bit internally because actually, at this intercollegiate exhibition, we announced something that was under the radar, and we still haven't announced it anywhere except
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
And it's for our MECI Valorant, which is a collegiate invitational. So it is tying back to your question, like we had to have this discussion. Which
Yeah.
game title, which genre do we launch with? Because as a collegiate invitational, it's a little bit more structured, and we want it to be something much more influenced by sports franchise formats. So I think when it comes to attracting sponsors, they don't know the details of the culture that drives viewers or
Mhm.
competitive players to go from casual to competitive or semi-competitive to pro. Like that's just not on the radar for companies that are looking to sponsor. That's not so much their core focus. The things that they're looking for is can be summarized in two ways: wide reach or really a lot of depth in reach. So
Mhm.
wide reach would be games like League of Legends, Valorant. What else? Fortnite.
Mhm.
Mass appeal type game titles. And then if you're going for depth, you're going for a smaller audience, but a huge fan base, or sorry, a tiny or smaller fan base with a just purely driven by passion and love for it. And that's what the fighting game side has. So they're a much smaller genre compared to first person shooters. live action, third person game titles. But that's what a sponsor is looking for. They're looking for either wide reach or huge depth and circle of influence. So a good example of circle of influence would be you could get an endorsement from Justin Wong, if you're familiar with the fighting game world.
Hmm. Yeah.
He has such a loyal following that you get attention. Like you can get a lot of viewers and you can engage with them with a lot of depth thanks to someone like Justin Wong. Or you could go for that mass appeal and go for that game title that everyone just loves. And the cool thing is, Arian, we've done it all. Like we've done depth, we've done wide, going for wider reach and mass appeal. So that's kind of the two things that would allow us to define which genres are most attractive to sponsors. But the truth is, they don't really care about the genre. They care more about, is it wide reach or is that deeper circle of influence. However, we can translate that. Wide reach, first person shooters. The way I look
Yeah.
at it, that's your genre. MOBAs can work too in that wide reach audience as well. Just there's not a lot of competing titles in that space. You kind of just are dominated by two bigger players, right?
Mhm.
League of Legends and Dota.
Yep.
But for fighting games, you got depth. You go into Super Smash Bros. It's like, whoa, that audience is a whole other world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I would say first person shooters and MOBAs are kind of the major genres right now where you're trying to attract sponsors. Games in those genres are going to get you a wider reach, and that's what the sponsors are interested in. Circle of influence one is a little tougher to convince sponsors to buy into, because what if they don't know who that circle of influence is? If they don't
Mhm.
value that audience, they'd rather go for the wider reach. But yeah, I would say first person shooters and MOBAs are genres that are safe bets because they get that mass appeal.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting to see the different types of approaches that you guys take when you're looking at a game title. I didn't know it was that in depth. I thought a lot of people just look. I think it's a common misconception that a lot of people just think about sponsors as numbers, right? You guys are just only looking for viewers or something, but it's really cool to see what you guys are actually looking for. So, talking back to kind of like the process. So, let's just say if I were approaching you guys as someone who wants to be sponsored, I have an event coming up. What's your process like looking at this kind of event? What would you guys do first when breaking down what I'm basically pitching?
Go for it, national community manager.
Ooh, okay. Uh, while two people work together, they could have a different sort of process and towards accepting things. At the end of the day, we end up sharing it together and making a decision.
Mhm.
But on a personal level, there's professionalism first that comes with it. So first point of contact, just little things like checking the grammar and just making sure everything's kind of good to go. Um, whether it's in your initial email or in the deck that you send, that sort of stuff is what I just those little details is kind of what gets me hooked in. Now, of course, there's going to be times where that isn't 100%, which is fine. Then I'll go ahead and I'll look at the event itself, and I'd be looking for something that has a really good entertainment value, something that offers a lot. Because, truth be told, the software that's out today allows anyone to host a tournament. It's really simple for most titles. And pretty much anyone can stream an event on their own now too. But really what makes a difference is the sort of work that goes into putting on a good event. So good scheduling, what you guys are doing with panels, just making sure there's content, preferably not a lot of downtime during the streams as well, and then a great entertaining game to watch or good
Mhm.
competition is always fun. So aside from that, um, I just like when people put a lot of effort into all the things that makes an event good. So they look at it in every direction. That also includes overlays and mic quality and stuff like that. So yeah, I know there's always a limitation to certain things you can do because it's not cheap to run a really good stream. but
Yeah,
it's also cheap to run a pretty good stream. You can
yeah.
get pretty close without spending too much. So honestly, if you guys just go out there and look at what the top competition is doing, and if you can even match half of that with your resources, which I think is pretty doable, you're already off to a great start. So it's just knowing what resources that you can use and drawing inspiration from other successful people. And yeah,
Yep.
Well
Ryan,
said.
did you have an answer?
Yeah, kind of another consideration I think that's worth just putting out there is companies want to spend their marketing dollars. So this is something that I think creates a lot of anxiety for anyone who's new to proposing a sponsorship opportunity in esports. If you knew that the person you're talking to is tasked with their responsibilities at their day job to spend marketing dollars and to find opportunities to sponsor, you should actually feel good about it. And I'm letting you guys know, if the
Mhm.
company is of a certain size, so let's just say not a startup, but company that's got revenue and they're generating business for a few years, if they have a budget for marketing, they're actually weighing all the marketing opportunities against one another, not just esports. They're looking at everything: SkyTrain ads in downtown Vancouver, bus ads to UBC, SFU, whatever it looks like. They're all opportunities, but they only have whatever that budget looks like. Could be $10,000 for that month, $100,000, who knows? So you could feel good going into the meeting knowing, oh, they just need to realize that my sponsorship opportunity is worth their time and their budget, because if it's not, that's also part of their job. They need to weed out
Mhm.
the opportunities that are not lucrative for the business. So when it comes to the approaching sponsors with an idea, you can just feel good knowing that they want to spend their money. The main question is, why should they pick you though? Why should they look at your organization versus the other organization, or this school versus that school? All of those finer details are how you get to that win. And I'm not going to answer those finer details because this question wasn't really about those details. But yes, I agree with Arian when it comes to looking at a good opportunity to sponsor. He covered a lot of the production side. So he's
Mhm.
referring to like live stream broadcast, managing the tournament, proper TOs, proper organization, that sort of thing. He's saying
Yeah.
that because if you don't have that, you're not getting the sponsor with bells and whistles, because they might sponsor you once, and then when they see it be this if it's an amateur feeling, that at the end of it all, and that sponsor feels like they were not given a good opportunity or a good sponsorship opportunity, well, that's a very common problem too. And that's what Arian's addressing, is production value and just professionalism overall. It is a big deal. But yeah, my last point here is, every time a company sponsors you, they're putting their reputation on the line. Because if you make a
Mhm.
mistake, the sponsor is associated with that mistake.
Mhm.
Is all mistakes bad? No. We all know things don't always go according to plan, especially with events. But if it's a mistake that has a public relations backlash or some sort of impact to the company, well, Arian maybe didn't address it, but you can avoid those scenarios by having a properly structured and organized event with good live stream production and just all the moving parts. So I do think the balancing act of keeping sponsors happy, keeping players happy, keeping volunteers happy, it's definitely not easy, but it is a lot easier when you have a prize pool. So you can attract those players. You can
Mhm.
maybe even afford to cover the cost of special guests, maybe commentators, casters, talented, maybe an exhibition match with some talented competitors. And that's kind of the ecosystem that we're in right now. And that's what we're here to talk about, is how do you get those sponsors, and how do you make things more sustainable? But yeah, Arian's point in conjunction with what I'm saying, he's got the production side covered. And then on my end, a little bit more pragmatic and looking out for like what can the business or the sponsor benefit from this opportunity? How do they benefit from it? So those two things combined, I think, are just great ways to attract sponsors.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's really important to really pinpoint like why, like the purpose of approaching these sponsors, and definitely like the reasoning for these companies really wanting to sponsor. Is there something that you guys notice that a lot of people really downplay when making a pitch deck or when approaching sponsors? Is there something really hidden that you guys look for that some people might not even consider? Yeah.
Aaron
Nothing
actually
hidden.
talks to a lot more schools than I do, at least lately.
Yeah.
In the
Mhm.
first year, well, let me clarify. Me Sports is only 2 years old. So when we started in
Mhm.
our first year, nobody knew about what we're up to, and schools were it was like very few schools had a proper like varsity team or like a proper esports management program. So in the first year, I was talking to schools a lot, and but I think Arian, you should answer first because you have more up to date information, and a
Mhm.
lot of schools. I think we've spoken to like there's about 175 post secondary schools in Canada, and I think we've spoken to about 50 or 40 somewhere in that range about esports specifically.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Arian.
I I think at the end of the day, the things that I'm looking for is what's really tied into marketing, which is also something that I've been learning quite a bit in the past 2 years. What sort of proof can you show that this event did great? Um, so let's say proof of performance. Is that something that you're mentioning in your deck? Are you asking for how much you specifically want? Are there certain tiers in the event? So a lot of people do a really great job at putting a deck together and what the event's about. But I noticed a recurring theme, and this could also be because the deck isn't fully complete yet. But a recurring theme that I've seen come is they don't ask for an amount at the end of the deck, or anywhere in it really.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of opportunities for a sponsor to come on, but when you don't know how much they want or what that entails, then it's kind of hard to make a decision. Of course, with people learning, there's leniency and whatnot because we're also relatively new. Ronnie's been in marketing a lot longer than I have. But yeah, that's just kind of it. If you guys are asking for something at the end, and if you're looking up what a proper sponsor deck is at a high level and what it would promise to the sponsor coming in.
Yeah, definitely looking at specifics. I think that's the recurring trend is being as specific as possible and knowing what you want and the exact amounts, especially for that. Um, yeah, but when talking kind of like about events specifically, like going back to kind of how Memory Express got into esports during COVID, for example, right? You guys started mostly during COVID. Do you think there's a big transition now for how companies are approaching online, in person, or hybrid? Have you guys thought about what kind of models will be adapted?
I think that's a Ronnie question.
Yeah, esports is definitely not going to disappear anytime soon.
Mhm.
Companies are. Let's compare U.S. and Canada for a bit.
Yeah.
The general feel about the U.S. versus Canada's esports industry is that we're about 5 years behind in almost every respect. So when I think about where is esports going and what role do companies have moving forward, I just look at sports franchises and I say it's going to go down the very same path. It already has. If you look at all the different leagues and how the game development companies they try to create their own regulations and ecosystems, like it's almost the same as NBA or MLB or NHL. The difference is every game is its own franchise. So you're not stuck with like just a few sports titles. You could have, who knows, by the end of the next few years, we could see well over 30 different structured esports franchises. There probably already is. I believe in 2019 or 2020, when I did a little bit of research, it was already something like over 20 global esports franchises. And this was before the pandemic. But I don't see it slowing down at all. And the role that companies are going to have in general is it's marketing opportunities for them. So the sponsorship dollars are definitely there. But then there's also esports organizations, management companies, teams, uh, distractions.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, but there's so many other opportunities that are going to just present themselves as the industry grows. But yeah, I don't see it slowing down at all. Fun fact: in 2019, global esports sponsorship dollars was more than the NFL, and the NFL is already known to have one of the largest like fees, if you just want to call it a fee to sponsor and have like a 30-second ad. Yeah, global esports already combined total was bigger than the NFL. So it's a little bit of an unfair comparison because NFL is North America only. But if you look at esports, it's like it can go global pretty fast. But the point still is already there. Like esports is on a very aggressive growth curve, and not that it's good news. I just think incidentally, the pandemic helped put esports on the map,
Definitely,
and
yeah.
it's just the way it is now. So sponsors, they're gonna stick around. Every company, when they see a lucrative opportunity, right now they just don't know that there's a lot of opportunities in esports. Some do, and I
Mhm.
consider them early adopters right now. Even to this day in 2022, I still think it's a pretty interesting space for everyone, like competitors, TOs, just people who are enthusiastic about esports and game titles. A lot of cool opportunities are presenting themselves, and wherever people are, companies will want to be part of it too. Like as long as people are going there and there's an audience, some company, someone like me, is going to come up with an
Mhm.
idea and say, "Hey, we should do a Valorant Collegiate Invitational."
Yeah.
Right? So it's a cool process, and I think we're in the very early stages of it. But definitely, I don't think there's any signs of slowing down. If anything, we're a retail company. This should
Yeah.
be
Mhm.
a message in itself. The retail company is committed to setting up a sister company called Me Sports United. That is a very, very interesting gesture. But yeah, proof's in the pudding, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of these companies getting involved are really going back to their grassroots of how they started, right? Like a lot of retail companies started out as, really small. Now they're really giving back to the community, coming kind of full circle, right? And we actually have some questions in the chat right now that I think are a good segue. Um, Someone is asking, what are some red flags and green flags when it comes to which sponsors you should reach out to? So, for example, let's just say if it was CIE and we see, hey, there's this potential sponsor, what should we be looking for? So, any green or red flags there?
Let's give one each, Arian.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Red flag for me, companies that have absolutely nothing to do with esports, gaming, or the community within them. And green flag would be companies that do have something to do with esports gaming in the communities.
Hmm. Here's my biggest red flag. When someone has an amazing idea and it sounds really good, and then I ask them how many events have they run in the past, and they say 0.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's like, so you want us to take more risk for an idea you're not willing to try out yourself, it's just too early stage sometimes. So it is a red flag for me when I see someone's dreaming big but doesn't have any experience in the industry, because then all I can think of is this could become a problem
Mhm.
if it's like an under promise, or sorry, over promise, under deliver dynamic, then typically people aren't going to be too happy with the end result. Green flags, though, I'm a fan of really short and straightforward presentations or decks. So in school, maybe not so much elementary, but like high school, university, college, everything has different weighting. So you have your final exams, you have your homework and all this stuff, but the final exam has the heaviest weighting. When I look at a sponsorship opportunity, the heaviest weighting comes in two forms. What is the return on investment for my company that I'm representing? And the return on investment can come in two ways: sales, product sales or service sales, some form of sale. And then the other side is brand awareness or increase in brand loyalty. So one involves a sale, the other one doesn't. Both are valuable, but if you had a 2-page deck and one page was just very clear and said, we can generate these many sales for you, you've got my attention. Only 1 out of 100 people in my experience so far has actually done that. And you know what's crazy? We partnered with them.
Mhm.
So we didn't just take them up on their opportunity. We built an entire in-house PC around this person. Their name is Crash Coic. So my red flag is when someone has a grand vision and then over promises, and then when I dig into some details, it's clear that they don't have the experience to back up those dreams. I say continue dreaming. Just be prepared for the workload and
Yeah.
and the work ethic that comes with that. And then the green flag, that's an instant win, is when someone shows up and says, thinking about that weighting, right? Like a nice deck does not carry the same amount of weight as someone who just says, I can accomplish this for you. We can sell X number of blah, 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 because here's how we're going to do it. When I see that, even if the plan isn't correct and I disagree with the plan, I know that their head is in the right place, because they're actually
Mhm.
looking in terms of return on investment rather than just please sponsor us. Because I want to know, how is this going to benefit Memory Express or Me Sports or whoever? And if it doesn't benefit us, well, then the budget that I'm supposed to spend isn't going to go to that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I think the big message here is kind of like the return and if there's actually value in your audience, right? So some companies or even esports teams have been getting sponsored by something kind of irrelevant from esports. Like, I don't want to diss too much, but like for example, why would you want a mortgage company to sponsor collegiate stuff when
I'm so glad you brought this up.
most people can't even afford a home in this day and age? So it's really cool to see like the relevance and the requirement for that as well. And we also had another question kind of in chat right now. So this is one of my questions as well, is especially from like the collegiate side, I feel like a lot of people might be not aware of how much money they should be asking. So when do you know that you're overvaluing or undervaluing your project? And what are kind of steps to make sure that you don't do that? Like, because I think that's a really big problem now because people are asking too much or asking for too little. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
You know what? I think this is all you, Ronnie. You are extremely experienced at this kind of stuff.
It's such a good question. I'm actually just impressed by the question alone. So I have a good story. This is really, really funny. The I won't name anyone, just to keep it clean and professional. Uh, and this was something that actually didn't happen with Memory Express. This was with a different esports organization that I was representing. And at this time, I don't know. chicken katsu girl. I
Mhm.
don't know if you're hearing me right now, so I'm gonna just kind of put this back out there as another question. If you had an event and you had a prize pool of $500, would you would you be open to paying commentators more than your prize pool if it's just one commentator? Like, does that make sense? And I wanted to actually put this out there because there is definitely a point that relates to undervaluing or overvaluing things. But I don't know if Chicken Katsu's girl is in the chat, but maybe I could throw it back over to
Mhm.
actually I'll throw it back to Arian because you
Yeah.
you play this side as well, right? If if I was a student and I came up to you and I said we have a $500 prize pool already accounted for, but I would like to come back to you because I'd like to hire a commentator for $750. Where does your brain go?
I'd say that honestly doesn't make sense. You should go for someone who's experienced but wouldn't ask for something that's more than the prize pool itself. So someone willing to help grow the community and maybe take a hit on how much money they make, but create a good relationship and get something good out of it.
So what Arian actually addressed was an overvalued event. So whenever or an opportunity shows up and someone asks for a certain dollar amount, we have enough experience at this point where we can look at an event and we could actually determine what is the operational cost. We can be like, oh,
Mhm.
you're going to need this many people, and whether or not they're volunteers, you're going to have some costs you're going to incur if you want a prize pool or guest commentators, or you want to bring in professionals. So whenever I think about this question, is like, what is our event worth? Are we undervaluing or overvaluing it? It actually starts with the expenses. Because if you want to attract a sponsor with confidence,
Mhm.
I'd say the best thing to do is you show them what this event's going to cost you guys. Like, here's the cost of our prize pool. Here's the cost of our commentators. We need to pay for some form of graphic design, maybe like all these different costs. If you actually showed it in a deck, it would also make it a lot easier to know if your ask is being way too high or if it's not high enough. So that's one way to determine if you're asking for too much or too little is just disclose the complete expenses that you're going to incur from the event. The other way to think of it is also just overall reach. So this is the default mode most of the larger companies would go to is they don't assume that you're going to generate sales for them, but they can safely assume that you're going to increase viewership, brand awareness, brand loyalty. So when you have an event that has 100 concurrent viewers on Twitch as an average versus 1,000, you should be asking for more if you have 1,000.
Mhm.
It is always going to be relative to the costs of your events, but also the end results. When you combine those two, you should get a very, very clear picture if you're asking for too much or too little. But a good salesperson will also know how to package this information and present it as effectively as possible. So a good salesperson is almost like a cherry on top, or a good someone who can just sell the vision of that event and then attract a sponsor. You could definitely increase your ask if you do a very good job as a whole. Like, now we're not just talking
Mhm.
about operational expenses. We're not just talking about social media reach and all this stuff, but all the moving parts combined, if you're able to create something that is just so pristinely systematic and just effortless on the sponsor's end, you could ask for even more because you're going to get them a return with little effort, and all they have to do is pay 10K or 5K or 2K or 1K, whatever that number is. So last point is, get your sleep. Make sure you don't think about these things when you're in a position of just poor health, because you're not going to come forward with that confidence, and you're not going to look at your deck with confidence. You're going to look at it and be like, I'm just not experienced. That doesn't always matter. What matters is, where can this go? What are the results you've gotten in the past? And then we meet somewhere in the middle. Like, we know that it's never going to be perfect.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that that question is definitely valid to like everyone. Like for us too, we wonder and ask ourselves, are we going to be able to sustain our event? Is it within our cost? Can we afford this? And if we need sponsors, can we bring in sponsors and cover these costs? This shortfall. So we're already doing a similar dance that Chicken Katsu Girl is asking.
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of bouncing back to the answer you guys gave, you guys mentioned kind of like the unnecessary costs. What are some costs that you think are that you've noticed that are completely unnecessary in your opinion, or something that feels necessary for events?
But we think is unnecessary.
Yeah. So for example, I know, for example, like in-person events, I see some people paying like $100 in food, right? And they're writing it off as a sponsorship, check. So what are some things that you've
Mm,
deemed really unnecessary? It could be an online event as well.
hmm.
Mhm.
Unnecessary.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like talking to some previous panelists, they actually mentioned how some like tournaments, for example, you just give away stuff just for the sake of giving away, right? But there's no real value because you're just kind of like tossing away money, right? So, kind of where do you draw that line between like value and over, compensating, right?
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way that we would look at giveaways is a great example.
Mhm.
If we had a $200 giveaway versus a $2,000 giveaway, yeah, absolutely. There's a different approach here. We wouldn't give the more expensive $2,000 giveaway the same approach and effort as the $200 giveaway. There needs
Mhm.
to be something mm, more structured and a lot more enticing to justify why we would give a $2,000 giveaway. I would say unnecessary is actually relative to the scope of the event, because I think
Mhm.
when you spend money on an event, whether it's online or in person, the goal should always be to address a solve a problem in some form that needs to be addressed in order for that event to happen. So I wouldn't say it's ever unnecessary to do like anything, but if we were to say prioritize as a sponsor, if we were to think about how we would prioritize our funds, the size of the event, the viewership, and the reach
Mhm.
does help us justify a larger giveaway or a larger contribution. We could take this event as an example, the Canadian Intercollegiate Exhibition that you guys are organizing. Part of the reason that it made sense for us is because you guys showed how organized your team really is.
Mhm.
So it allowed us to know that the investment will be taken care of, and it's not just going to go to $1,000 worth of pizza. Like we know that
Yeah.
you guys are going to do the right thing here. But overall, I do think the unnecessary. That's interesting. I wouldn't prioritize expensive guest commentators if you can't afford them. Like that's that's
Mhm.
that's an easy one actually. Now that I think
it's
about it,
really good.
so someone offers you someone great, someone who's just super talented and you love them, and you wanna bring them in as a guest commentator, but they tell you it's $1,000 for the day.
Yeah.
If you have a good salesperson or someone who could actually pull that off, I say go for it. But if that is your key strategy to make the event a success and you have no idea how you're going to get that money, just don't do it. Find another
Yeah.
way to
Mhm.
build that brand and build that event reputation up over time. Um, so yeah, I would say it's more about prioritizing those funds as effectively as possible, because a lot of us have to spend that budget. It's part of our responsibilities to find these opportunities and to invest in them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and getting back to kind of like the whole like creating this kind of approach, some people might in the chat or watching might not have any ideas on where to start, right? Is there any kind of like, are there any like programs or resources that you guys found useful when creating these kind of like pitch decks?
I guess on my end, it was really just thinking about the event in its entire capacity in terms of everything that you want to be doing and how it's going to benefit the people that you're going to ask to sponsor your event. So going back to Ronnie's point on what sort of value do you bring for the sponsor, that really just comes down to, I mean, if you're starting out completely, what can you do in your current capacity? You can put their logo on your overlay. You can use your network of friends and maybe your esports club that you're at to market the event over Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. So just collectively gather all the resources you have. Hopefully, you have a pretty serious team of people that are willing to help you because it's not easy to grow esports, especially if you're starting out as a student. Um, just really try and find all the resources that you can online that are free. Try to find example sponsor decks. Look at other streams.
Look at other
Look at
streams. Aaron and
yeah,
I did this religiously. We
yeah,
looked at other streams and we just asked ourselves, why did they do that?
exactly.
Like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Most of the time, it's us just learning that, oh, it makes sense. Like this
Yeah,
is how it's done because it makes sense. But when you're starting out, you don't know what makes sense. You just don't know where to
yeah,
start. So we learn from other people who already paved a bit of a path.
yeah.
Mhm.
Now, with that said, try and keep your production quality as consistent as possible. Maybe you don't need all the bells and whistles if you're starting out because you might not even have that much of a huge viewership, but you're going to have passionate people there to support you and you're going to have people who are excited to compete. So you're just going to do your best to keep it consistent. Whether it's scheduling, communication, whatever that is, take control of everything that you know you have power to do that doesn't require any extra money and just really let it run through your brain. Make everyone happy who's helping you with your event, and you will get dedicated people wanting to come back and help you grow. And I mean, there's just so much that you can do, but it really comes down to the basics and uh, make it fun. Make your event fun. Don't make the players play way too much. Mistake that I made on our very first event. We were hosting CS:GO and it went for about 16 hours.
Yeah.
Because some teams left and then it was just really funny. I had to stream in the games under my control, but it was really fun at the same time. And because we were talking to the competitors the entire time, they understood what the problems were. They knew when they could go on break, when they had to come back. So do not be lazy on that part. It's so easy to just sit there and just let them wait for their game. Take that time to communicate with the people who are taking time away from their weekend to come and be a part of your event because everyone's important.
Yeah, exactly.
The end of my rant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no problem. I mean, we definitely learned a lot. I mean, we're kind of like closing towards the end of the panel, so I'm gonna like kind of end with some kind of questions that I think a lot of people were asking since you guys mentioned all these programs previously. So I just kind of wanted to ask, like, what is Memory Express kind of working on? Like, what is Memory Express Esports? What's M United? Stuff like that. If you want to give a rundown of kind of like the initiatives that you guys wanted to share.
You run.
I'm just like, how
Businessman.
much do we share here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of us are interested because we've seen the way you guys grown, and you guys are definitely in the collegiate space now. It's really exciting to see the new kind of tools you guys are working on, right, and the new projects as well.
We typically like to keep things pretty quiet until we're 100% ready to announce it.
Hmm.
I'm going to break my own rule for a moment.
Yeah.
So when we first started in April 2020, so 2 weeks after the pandemic, everything changed. It was almost like
Hmm.
the world was shut down. At least Canada was shut down at this time. And as a retail business, when these kind of things happen, retail is usually hit really hard.
Hmm.
We were fortunate enough, though, to be considered an essential service because a lot of first responders, hospitals, firefighters, even the police, they needed electronics to convert over to this work from home transition. So at that time, the goal for our um, yeah, it was always called Me Sports. Uh, the goal was actually so simple. Let's show our customers that we can have fun in a negative time like the pandemic, and at the same time support the efforts that our healthcare system is pushing through really aggressively. So we just called them Me Sports online tournament fundraisers. We did about 10 in the last 2 years, and the 10 that we did made us realize there is a bigger demand in Canada for esports than what's being served. There's very few collegiate spaces for esports, and I'm literally talking about like computer lounge type spaces, like
Hmm.
club space, somewhere social for people to come together. Until we started reaching out to schools and seeing, oh wait, there are some schools that are doing this, and uh, we're talking to SFU actually right now, and it's
Yeah.
supporting their esports lounge, currently called the SFU Gaming Lounge in the new sub building. But I also know that TMU is also doing a very similar thing with Red Bull. Like there's a lot
Yeah.
of
Definitely.
exciting news for esports lounges there. So once we realized that what we thought was just a for fun community driven online fundraiser, what happened was we realized we accidentally served a need without realizing it. So then
Hmm.
we looked at our past events and we realized about 75% of our competitors were students. So we
Hmm.
dug into that a little bit further and we decided to ask ourselves the next question, which is how many dedicated Canadian collegiate leagues are there? There's almost none. Like
Yeah.
they're
Hmm.
all US, Canada, or North America, but there's none that are purely for the Canadian audience. So in summary, that's what we're working on now is finding that that path to bring esports infrastructure to the collegiate space, because that's kind of the problem that I think we need to address as an industry first
Yeah.
is how do you
Hmm.
attract a casual player to go from competitive semi-pro to pro. Like
Hmm.
in any sports franchise there's agents, and those agents are looking for the next players to take them from high school to college to pro.
Yeah.
So we don't have that right now. We don't have a way for people to go into a competitive space and say, "Hey, we're the best in Canada. Recruit our team. Take our players. Please take our players." Like
Yeah.
that's something we don't even have the luxury of doing right now. So Me Sports United is the rebrand because it used to just be called Me Sports. But because we're so focused on infrastructure, we decided what we're actually doing is uniting the industry. We're trying
Hmm.
to pull together all the moving parts and show people, not just companies for sponsorships, but I'm also talking about parents. We need to show that there is a future for this industry and that people can actually make a living and a career path out of it. So that's why we decided to start the MECI Valorant, so the Me Sports Collegiate Invitational for Valorant, because we felt that would be a good starting point to almost give schools like bragging rights.
Yeah.
Because what I would
Hmm.
love to see is a school that doesn't have a varsity team wins the MECI Valorant event, And then because of it, faculty and the athletics department decide we should do something about this. That's my biggest win, is to transform the perception of esports, and that's basically what we plan to do. So it's not going to stop at Valorant.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something really exciting to see. Yeah, I noticed one thing you mentioned that actually could be an answer for another question was bringing value, right? You guys always mention it this entire panel, right? But you guys said you guys filled a need that you guys didn't know, right? I feel like that can be applied to so many events that people want to get sponsored by, right? So I think that's one of the key points that people should look at when marketing and like getting their event sponsored, right? So that's really exciting to see. And definitely, yeah, Canada is definitely one of those regions that definitely need a lot more support, and we're definitely behind. But it's really cool to see like the initiatives being brought on. We're kind of wrapping up right now, so yeah, I'm just gonna ask my last kind of question. That's what are you guys working on next? Is there anything really exciting to show? And if you guys have anything to shout out,
Hmm. Well, on the shout out side, shout out to the CIE team. It's been a great event. Um, love the overlays, love the art, love everything so far. And in terms of what we can share, there's a lot I want to, but that's with the business development manager on what we can and cannot share. So
yeah.
I don't want to be talking out of my element here. So nope, all the pressure's going towards Ronnie. It pretty much is what I want to say.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, just want to say thanks to specifically the early supporters that we had, or still have, because when we first did this in May 2020, so we started planning in April and we did 2 events in May 2020 just to kind of like kick things off and say, hey, we want to fundraise. We were also kind of rushing because we wanted to fundraise to support all the efforts made to just deal with COVID treatment. So we were kind of rushing to fundraise and get things
Mhm.
going. So yeah, I definitely need to acknowledge a few of our early adopters who were with us from like the first few months. I would say even like the first 6 to 12 months. They're all early adopters. They're all amazing. So yeah, definitely shout out to one of my favorite commentators, Johnny Esports. If you guys
Mhm.
ever work with him, if you know who he is, he's someone I really have. I believe he's going to go pretty far as a commentator. We've got Coach Caster, who goes by another username now,
Cup of Frag, Cup of Frag,
Cup of Frag. Yes,
and Artrin.
yeah, Artrin as well. So these are just some of the volunteers that we had in the earlier days, because there was a time when we didn't have a budget to pay for anyone.
Mhm.
So we just redirected all of it to prize pools and giveaways. But some of these earlier adopters volunteered with us, and then even when they were getting paid at other events, we weren't able to. Eventually, we did. We do now. So a lot of the people who gave us that support and that faith in the beginning, I just want to shout them out. Um, and then to tie in how grateful we are for that, we're not slowing down. So we
Mhm.
did announce that Valorant Invitational coming up. Um, there's more than one season a year.
Yeah.
So that's something I don't know we've advertised, but I'm happy to say that we know kind of the struggles and challenges that students face. So we're very happy to say that the seasons and the way that everything is scheduled is catered 100% to your schedules at school. Like we've
Mhm.
fully accounted for that. We've done our best to just make sure that we're giving that space to the students so that they can actually compete and enter and not have to think about too many scheduling challenges. So yeah, I think definitely a big shout out to our early adopters. Specifically, another one I want to shout out is Max.
Yeah.
Max is just one of our biggest supporters in our Discord community, and he actually I don't think he's actually volunteered with us before.
No, he came in the same time as Leo. I believe, who's also extremely early.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
whether or not you volunteered or did any sort of contracting work, if you're an early adopter, we appreciate it because we just started this whole thing as an idea. It was never meant to be a bigger deal than what we started with, and we knew that from the beginning. We're like, yeah, we did it on the side. It wasn't our main daily responsibilities. So yeah, I'd say thanks to all the early adopters, and because of that, it gave us the kind of the boost we needed to keep on going. And yeah, we're very excited to see where this goes in the future. So if you missed the first season, just know there's more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And sorry, another huge shout out to Leo, who started out as a volunteer towards the end of April 2020, or sorry, towards the end of 2020, and ended up working at Memory Express in our retail side, and then into Me Sports after his probationary period. So
Huge
that's
huge
also a really
win.
cool story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he went
Mhm.
volunteer to staff to me sports staff.
Yeah.
Like that is a cool progression. And by the way, there's probably less than like formal full-time employment positions in the esports industry in Canada. I don't have this as a study or some sort of metadata meta analysis, but
Yeah.
between
Mhm.
other professionals in the industry, we actually think there's less than 500 employees in this entire country
Mhm.
dedicated to esports full time. So for Leo, shout outs to him because him as a volunteer, we already felt he was ready to work with us, but it just took some time to give him some room to like learn how things are run in this company. And yeah, it's great now because he's officially part of our team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, that sounds really great. I mean, it's just really inspirational. I think those stories definitely can relate to a lot of people and definitely give ideas to those wanting to create these kind of events and tournaments. But yeah, we're closing up the panel. So thank you guys for coming on. We're really excited to see what Memory Express comes up with and all the cool initiatives you guys are working on. And for the rest of CIE, we're starting our Valorant top 8 in less than 30 minutes. So we'll get started that soon. And we'll take a little break till then. But for now, keep watching CIE. We got 2 more days coming up and really excited to end on Canada Day. So see you guys soon.
Thank you,
Thanks for having
Benson.
us.